if we're trying to achieve the things that we've never had before, right? Think about that for a second. I'm going to achieve things I've never had before. What does that entail? It's going to require me to have to do things that I've never done before, right? Because if I keep doing the same things that I've been doing, am I going to achieve something that I've never had? Highly unlikely, right?
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it. How's your day starting off, man?
Sunshiny. The sun is shining, at least for a few more days. And then it's snowflakes in the air.
This is the season.
Ugh. Not ready.
I'm
not ready, but I'm ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I love the change of seasons. I love everything that it brings, but yeah. Did I leave cards on the table this summer? Yeah, maybe. Some of that I didn't have too much choice over. Just is what it is, right? Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Saw a lot of live music, took some amazing motorcycle trips, watching my kids grow up and move into new phases in their life. It's been a fantastic summer.
I think, like you said too, like, did you leave some cards on the table? I think every season passes and you look back on it, you're like, I could have crammed one more thing in there, or I wish I had squeezed this thing into that season. But like you said, like when you unpack your summer, like you did just now, that's a pretty full summer. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Not
to mention what I've done over the last 2 months and really changing the circle of folks that I hang out with. And there's a lot of positive going on.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads us right into our topic today, right? Which is really about, if we're trying to achieve the things that we've never had before, right? Think about that for a second. I'm going to achieve things I've never had before. What does that entail? It's going to require me to have to do things that I've never done before, right? Because if I keep doing the same things that I've been doing, am I going to achieve something that I've never had? Highly unlikely, right? However, even if we don't succeed at that ultimate goal that we've put out there, there's that whole space in between that we call the journey. And there's a lot of beauty in that journey and a lot of things and extraordinary things that can be learned from that journey. So, how do we achieve the things that we've never had? We got to go places we don't know, and we've got to really embrace the journey. A lot of the time together, a lot of the things that we've been talking about over the last 2.5 years here.
That whole concept of you're going to have to do things you've never done before is really uncomfortable. Like, you are going to have to step into some uncomfortable stuff, and you are going to have to take some risks, and you are going to have to try some things that you don't know if you're good at or not. Or like we were just talking about this the other day. Like, think about the first week that you go into the gym. When you first decide I'm going to start working out, that first week in the gym is the most uncomfortable week of your life sometimes, because you're walking into a gym. You maybe know what you're doing on the equipment. Maybe you don't. You're not fit. So you feel a little bit like an idiot walking through the doors. All these other people do this. All these other people do that. And like we were talking about earlier, you start to compare. And that's one of the things that makes it as uncomfortable as it does, is that comparison. what you don't realize in that moment sometimes, and this is a good reminder for all of us, is you're not competing with anyone else in that moment. You're competing with yourself. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is you. And that ties back to doing those uncomfortable things for the first time, changing what you're doing so you can change the results you're achieving. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be different. It's going to be new. And the only person, as you're going through that journey that you're talking about, the only person you need to compare yourself to in that journey is yourself. We lose that sometimes. We forget that, and we start to compare ourselves to everybody else around us and worry about what they're thinking. Even though most of those people are not, none of those people really are actually thinking about us in the process. So,
Yeah. And many of you have been on your fitness journey, some that are starting that, some that will be listening to this today and going, wow, I need to start a fitness journey. And I will tell you this, the first 21 days, first 3 weeks are just about establishing the habit, just establishing the discipline to get to the gym. Doesn't matter what you do when you get there, just get there. Be consistent with the time, create that discipline, and get to the gym on the 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it is that you're targeting, and get there and establish that routine and establish that discipline. Because then as things get harder, as you really do start, doing the movements and getting into the weightlifting or, the yoga class or whatever it is that is your forte for fitness, it's going to get hard. And you got to have that discipline to fall back on, to go, I didn't want to do this today, but I did it anyway.
And it's going to be hard, and there are going to be moments when it sucks, and there are going to be moments where you want to quit. When you get into that, you're going to have to do things you've never done before mindset. I think understanding that there are going to be moments where it sucks, you almost have to pre-prep your mind for the fact that I know I'm going to encounter a moment where I'm not going to want to do this, and make the decision before you hit that moment that you're going to do it anyway. Because you have to condition yourself to, I'm going to do the activity and I'm going to create the momentum and I'm going to go when I don't feel like it. And I've already made the decision. I'm going.
It's definition of discipline. It's doing the things you don't want to do when you don't want to do them, right? It's doing those hard things regardless of how you feel.
And I would say that applies to every area of our lives. Like we can go down the path of the gym and the workouts and the training and all of that. It applies to your life at work. It applies to your relationships outside of work with your family, your spouse, your kids, your friends. It applies to trying out a new hobby, something you've never done before. I want to see if I can do that. All of those things are going to require that same mindset, that same growth mindset. Like, I want to figure out if I can do this. I want to figure out what I'm capable of, what my boundaries and my limits are. They're all going to require that same thing. You're going to have to do some things you've never done before.
Yeah. And I think through the course of that whole process, right, consistency is a term that comes up often, right? We want to be consistent with our training, want to be consistent with the message that we're putting out there. We want to be consistent with, from a sales perspective, we want to be consistent with our outreaches to new prospects. If we're marketing, we want to be consistent with the message that we're putting out there. If we're in the information security space, we want to be consistent with the way we're handling, certain events. So what does consistency actually mean? I think it really comes down to, what does consistency equal and what does it not equal? And I'm going to start with what it doesn't equal. Consistency does not equal perfection. What does that mean? It means I don't strive perfection in everything that I'm doing, right? There are going to be tough steps. There are going to be things in the gym where I'm leveling up, and man, it's going to be hard, but I'm consistently going after those efforts, right? I'm consistently moving the bar. Consistency is not about that negative talk and about beating ourselves up and being hard on ourselves of not achieving something, right? This goes back to that. Who are we competing against? We're competing against ourselves, first and foremost, and always. 1% better every day should be our target. If I can just 1% every day over the course of 365 days, that's a massive gain. So what is consistency? It's getting back on track no matter what life throws at us, right? We've talked about that. I've talked about it here. I've struggled this year with consistency in the gym. And yeah, life was throwing stuff at me. But I didn't give up. I kept trying. Yes, I wasn't making it to the gym every day, but I was still doing some sort of workout, right? Some sort of training. And also, consistency is about not quitting when things get hard, right? How often do we face that challenge? Things get a little difficult, we throw in the towel. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, so-and-so is so much better at this. I can't do that. Again, change your perspective. Who are you competing against? Stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and start worrying about what you're doing.
And you hit on it. Guard your self-talk. Like if I look at all the demons I've had in my life, my own personal self-talk has probably drugged me down and drugged me backward more than anything else. The moments where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. I mean, your self-talk, you let that spin around enough and you can convince yourself of anything. And it goes both directions. If you have really good self-talk, you can convince yourself that you are ready, you are enough, you are strong, like all of those things. Or you can let it be what pulls you backward. But those conversations we have in our own head, we worry about what other people think of us and how they're going to talk about us. We're sometimes our own worst enemy with our own self-talk.
I would say 90% of the time it's the case. We talk ourselves out of the things that we should be doing, right? Our head gets in the way of what our capabilities are. We have to learn to have that positive self-talk and ability to amp yourself up. I mean, you had some challenges over the last couple of weeks that I'm sure the self-talk got into your head and maybe caused a little bit of the paralysis that you were dealing with.
Well, absolutely. You and I were talking about it offline, getting ready for recording this. I was in Nepal the last couple of weeks, and I'm afraid of heights. So that just use that example right there. I am afraid of heights. I have been my whole life. And so I get into these situations on these suspension bridges or coming up and down these hills. And if I let my self-talk guide me one direction or the other, I either convince myself that I'm strong enough to get through this and I'm going to be just fine. Or if I let the self-talk spiral a little bit, I convince myself that I'm going to get hurt doing this and I don't belong here and this is too dangerous. This last 2 weeks, especially the week that we were out in the mountains, was all about the self-talk. Then the self-talk had the ability to make or break the trip. From hour to hour and moment to moment, where my self-talk was at really dictated the experience that I was having. It was crystal clear. And to the point where this was super interesting to me. We got onto a trail one night and we were going to have to hike in the dark to get to where our next campsite was going to be. And so we're hiking with headlamps on up this hill, and a couple of things happened. So hiking up the hill with the headlamps on, I could only see 5 or 10 feet in front of me. I had no idea how big the hill was that we were climbing. And they didn't tell us, like, when we started to climb it, we're going to climb for an hour and a half. So it was 1 foot in front of the hour, 1 foot in front of the other, one step at a time. And we climbed this hill. As we're climbing it, I couldn't see the drop-offs that were to my right and to my left. That didn't mean that the things I was afraid of weren't there the whole time, but I wasn't paying attention to them. So my self-talk wasn't dragging me down like, oh, you're going to fall off the side of this mountain. It was just take the next step. And so it wasn't until later in the trip when I saw some of those spots where we had hiked and walked and I could see the drop-offs that the self-talk spiraled the other direction and I had to really guard it. But when you could not see the fear, not see the things you were afraid of, and just keep going one step in front of the other and not be worried about how long it was going to take, because nobody told me it was going to be an hour and a half. So it was just take one more step, take one more step. That was the win of the trip right there. Just take one more step.
Well, it goes back to the same conversation we've been having for the last 2.5 years. I don't need to see the top of the staircase. The top of the staircase being your camp. I just need to see the next step. And what a perfect picture of that effort. What you just experienced last week perfectly articulates that exact moment. All you have to do is put one foot in front of the other, regardless of all of the obstacles around you. Because if you had been able to see all of those things, your head probably would have talked you out of much of it.
I would have puckered up and I would have quit and I would have stopped. And by doing that, I would have had no idea what I was capable of. There were a couple of times where our guides got me way out of my comfort zone and doing things that if you had asked me back here, am I capable of this? I would have probably said no. They didn't give me the option to say no. They just said, hey, this is where we're going to go, do this. And in those moments, it was like I didn't have a choice. By them not giving me a choice or an option, I just had to figure it out. And by the time I was done climbing up this rock face or whatever it was, I realized I was capable of doing that because they made me do it. They didn't ask me, can you do it? They just like said, do it. The cool thing was too, we have talked about that take one more step concept so many times on the podcast that when I was doing it, I was thinking about that exact thing. Just take one more step. You don't need to know the full path. You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You don't need to know how far you are away from the destination. Take one more step. And that's exactly what I did. But I thought back to podcast episodes as I was doing it, and it became very real to me, which was cool.
And the other really cool part about that story is that you got to come back down that trail in the light and actually see what you had accomplished. Now, I'm sure there was much of that you were like patting yourself on the back going, hell yeah, we did this, right? And I made this happen. And the other party goes, holy crap, I did this. How did I do that? Given what the terrain really was like.
Well, and to that, coming back down in the daylight when you could see everything was harder. And especially as somebody who's afraid of heights, it was a little bit more difficult. One of the things I realized on my way back down, at one point, my guide, he reached back and gave me his hand. He was just like, hold my hand through this part right here. And that was a moment where ego and pride created a big battle for me. Because I'm like, I didn't want to be the guy who needed somebody's hand to get down the side of the hill. And it was hard for me at first to accept the help. And I probably wouldn't have been in a position where I would have asked for the help at first. Once I got comfortable with the idea that it was okay to have help, and I let my pride and my ego go a little bit, there were a couple of spots further down the mountain where I did ask for help. And I'm like, dude, can you toss me a hand as we go around this spot? Because I'm having a tough time. And so that was, it was a humbling part of the experience, but I think makes me a little better coming home, because take that off the mountain and into work. I've got things that I need help with. I've got a lot of things back here at home that I need help with. And the only way I'm going to ask for help is if I'm humble enough to say, I don't have it all together. I need help.
Well, and that whole story of a guide and a mentor, I think, go hand in hand, right? That guide, that mentor has been there. They're going to help you to get through that. They're going to help you to understand how to get through that. They're going to give you their hand to take you through that so that you can overcome that faster, more efficiently, more effectively. There's huge value in that.
Hmm.
Whether you're on the mountain, whether you're in your personal life, whether you're in business, right? Coming to the realization that we don't have all the answers, that we need to build a community of folks around us, of mentors, of mentees, right, at all different levels. And that community is going to be stronger in the long run than we are today.
Well, you're one of the people I look at for that, because you have not only, I know you've got some really good mentors, but you are a really good mentee as well. Like, I know you've got other people that you've mentored. You've mentored me a ton as we've been having these conversations and built this friendship up. That's I think a big key to this whole journey. Like, we talked about journey a little bit ago, right? The journey is part of the journey is this: having people who will mentor you and fill you up downstream, but then you being from upstream, fill you up from upstream, but then taking that and delivering some of it downstream, having people that you can mentor as well, where you can say, as I'm learning, I've got some things I can add to you that I can share with you that's going to help your journey as well. It's got to go both ways. It's give and take. Like, I'm going to receive it from one person, I'm going to hand it downstream to the next person. There's something really cool when that happens.
Yeah. It kind of goes right back to how we started this podcast today, right? With a quick question: who are you and what do you do? I change lives. I change the way people think about life, right? The journey is life. The journey that we talk about is life, right? And I want to create the most magnetic, powerful life that I can for myself and for the people in and around me, which includes my friends and my family. 1% better every day, buddy.
And when you live that out, which you do every day, when you live that out, the world becomes a better place and we become better as individuals. Like exactly what you're talking about. You know exactly what your purpose is. You live it out and you do it, you become stronger, and the people that you touch and the people that you have interaction with, they get stronger as well. And if we can live in a world where that happens, that's winning. That's winning all day long.
All day long. And seeing other people succeed in and around you is hugely rewarding. We often, as humans, look at others winning as a negative, right? And I think if we can change the mindset in that to that of a positive, like seeing your friends, your family succeed should make you happy, not frustrated.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
So with that said, go out there and make some impact in your own life and those around you. Make it a great day and get after it.
Another good conversation, dude. Thank you. That wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.